It's an off day for the Golden State Warriors, but it's not an off day for Locked On Warriors. I have with me a legend in the broadcasting world. And I say legend despite the fact that look how young you look, man. You look good, dude. Maybe legend is the wrong term to apply.
Yeah, I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself there.
Well, dude, I mean, to me, anybody affiliated with NBA on TNT is high up in my books. And Jared Greenberg joins me next to talk about the Warriors and Grizzlies. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Jared Greenberg on Twitter at Jared S. Greenberg. He covers the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies. He is the courtside reporter for all the TNT broadcasts. Jared, it is such a pleasure to have you on. First things first, man. Look, the whole Bay Area is talking about one of our best defenders, and I hate saying one of the Warriors' best defenders. In the second, going down with an injury on a play that most of us call dirty. Steve Kerr called it dirty. You were there. You were just feet away from the whole incident. Tell us how, from your perspective, what happened on that play, and what kind of punishment do you think Dillon Brooks deserves for that play?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Cyrus. This is awesome to be able
to
chat with you here, and I'm excited to get out to the Bay Area here in the next few hours to continue this series. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. You know, we knew coming in, and Steve Kerr kind of gave some foreshadowing early before game 2 about how we expected this to be the most physical game that the Warriors are going to play all year. I don't think anybody expected it to literally be a bloodbath within the first 3 minutes, with Payton going down, Draymond going down, Steph Curry cutting his hand on something. It was nuts. My head was literally spinning the first few minutes of that game. And from my vantage point, I was right behind, kind of an angle behind where the basket Payton was trying to get that layup on. So I saw him go down, but I couldn't in real time, could not see the windup from Dillon Brooks and how hard he hit him and just how ugly it was. But I was right there. I went right behind the basket as soon as Payton went down, and there was no doubt. I mean, he's as tough as nails, right? He's as tough as it gets. For him to be in that type of pain was bad. You knew it was bad. And I had gotten tipped off by some people in the Warriors organization throughout the course of the game that this was not going to be a pretty outcome for Gary Payton. And now, you know, I know there's some optimism that maybe he could return if the Warriors continue on to the West Finals or the NBA Finals. But it's not something I would count on, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of the punishment, it would not surprise me at all if there's a 1-game suspension. I think that's a flagrant 2 that got him thrown out of the game. And I also think, based on just some of the things we've seen throughout the NBA this year, how the league office and basketball operations department has handled some of those, I would imagine just with the wind up and the way he hit him in the head. And really, one of the things that the league looks at is, like, they don't look at intent, but they look at the potential for injury. And like, that's one of the things that I think got lost in the sauce with the Draymond Green, Brandon Clark incident, was that while Brandon Clark did not get injured, there was potential for injury with that sequence of plays. And Gary Payton obviously did get injured, but anytime somebody is, can't defend themselves, they're going up, you hit them in the head, and they land the way they do, obviously it resulted in a massive injury. But I think the league is going to take that into account, and that's why I think the decision will be a 1-game suspension, and Dillon Brooks will be out for game 3.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Dub Nation is hoping for the entire series. I mean, I don't see that happening. I'm really looking at that Grayson Allen, Alex Caruso incident earlier this season as the benchmark for what to expect, because even the NBA begrudgingly suspended him 1 game back then, and I think it was largely from the blowback of the reaction to the injury and so forth. You're going to be in Chase Center again, and in my opinion, the TNT broadcast is second to none. It is the premier sports broadcast, between just the production quality of the game itself, the talent that covers the game, obviously the pre-halftime, post-game production crew, which you are a part of. I always just have a big smile on my face when I'm seeing you on there, jabbing up with Chuck. He's complimenting you on that beautiful head of hair of yours. You're wearing a hat right now. It's almost a crime.
Yeah,
Jared.
sorry to disappoint you with the hat. Yeah.
But you're going to be in Chase Center for Game 3. And we're eagerly anticipating the ruling regarding Dillon Brooks. But what kind of a reaction do you expect? I mean, Chase Center and Memphis, the Beale Street crowd there, it's very different. They're both passionate, but they're obviously the culture is very different. Yeah. What are you anticipating for games 3 and 4 in terms of the crowd? And what are you anticipating just in this series in general for these next 2 games?
Well, I got to say, Cyrus, like I've been ultra impressed. I got to say, I definitely was a little pessimistic and cynical heading into the first round. I covered the Nuggets Warriors Series 2 on TNT, and being there for the first ever true playoff game. I know there was a couple play-in games, but it wasn't the full crowd. Didn't have the same feel last year. But having, covered every single one of the Warriors' 5 straight trips to the finals at Oracle, like there's no building that even comes close to the way Oracle literally roared and shook during those games. So I just felt like, the bar was set so high, even if Chase was great, it wouldn't come close. And I think it's unfair to compare the 2 buildings, but it's kind of all we have. But with that said, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, I would say what's on my mind. I think people know that about me.
I believe that.
I was truly impressed with Chase Center and the crowd in the first round of the playoffs. And there were a couple of moments too, like, not to go off on a tangent on this, but it's just for me, the Warriors dynasty, what was so remarkable, and there's a lot, but to me, what really stood out in that dynasty was that Steph Curry changed kind of fandom in 2 ways. Number one, he changed the pregame routine, right? How thousands of people would come into Oracle and watch him warm up, which the only time in sports you've ever seen anything like that is when a big-time home run hitter in baseball would take batting practice, whether it's Bonds, McGuire, Sosa. I grew up watching Mike Piazza in New York. Like, you'd want to go and watch those batting practice and try and catch a home run ball. So that's number one. Number 2 that he changed was typically crowds would only in a moment go crazy on monster dunks. Monsters, breakaway dunks or, a poster over somebody. Well, Curry he electrified buildings home and away because of his ability to go on these personal runs or hit these shots from 30 and 40 feet that seemed impossible. And that's to me how he really electrified buildings. And I saw a little bit of that in that Denver series, particularly, in the closeout game when they would there's certain things would happen. They would go on runs, whether it be Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, Draymond making a play on Jokic or whatever it was. But that crowd really responded. It didn't have the same roar at the beginning of the game. There's not that same Warriors chant that you would hear. And at times I felt like it happened at the wrong time at Chase Center, right? Like a couple of times it happened when a guy on the Warriors was shooting free throws and you wouldn't have done that at Oracle. But with that said, I think the crowd has been really good. The environment's been really cool. And I think based on what's happened in the first 2 games of this series, the crowd's going to be amped up. And particularly, and let's call a spade here. A Saturday late evening game. What is it? What are we playing at 5:30 on Saturday local time?
Yes.
There's going to be plenty of beverages consumed. There's going to be plenty of lubing up, if you will, in Thrive City and around Chase Center for the hours leading up to on a Saturday afternoon. That this place will be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's a great point you brought up. Is that what Oracle is what I'd always call it. Is what they didn't have was a scene around the arena, like you take
tailgating.
And Chase Center has this whole vibe around it. They got Thrive City, they got some bars and restaurants. That's a great point. And I got to quickly show some love to BetOnline. They're a longtime sponsor of this program, and BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. And Jared, I would love your insights on the lines for this game, courtesy of BetOnline. First of all, this is a weird one. As of right now, despite the fact that Gary Payton II is ruled out pretty much for the remainder of the playoffs, even though there's that sliver of hope, I'm with you. I just don't count on it. Stephen Curry is still the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals MVP at 4-1. Devin Booker and Jason Tatum are next at 9-2. What are your thoughts on that? Is that just really jumping ahead? Is there any realism there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the thing I think always about betting lines that you have to be careful with is it doesn't always necessarily mean like that's who they believe the favorite is. That's where they think the money's going to go, right? So I think people have to be a little bit careful. I mean, to me, if I were to put some cash down on who I think would be the MVP of the NBA Finals right now, I think the leader would be Giannis, right? Like I think that's where I would initially go. But I got to tell you, and again, I just feel like the Warriors are just getting started here with what we've seen with these lineups. Like Steve Kerr is still literally putting lineups on the court that have played 0 seconds together all year, right? Remember game 1, Gary Payton and Klay Thompson both get into foul trouble, and all of a sudden here comes Damian Lee, who didn't play any minutes of real, meaningful minutes in the first series. And Damian Lee is coming off the bench in the first quarter to really help out. So I think the Warriors are still getting going here, and I think if they can get past Memphis, they'll be in prime. And again, we should not get ahead of ourselves because they got plenty of work to do here with Memphis. But I know as like an NBA junkie, I'm sure you are too. I am just I'm chomping at the bit to see Warriors Suns, man. I cannot wait to get there if that does indeed happen.
Oh man, yeah, and even though you're jumping ahead, I'm totally with you. That is, first, real quick, that this game 3, the Warriors are favored by 6.5. The over/under is 265. And again, just go to betonline.net for those lines and all the information. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Jared, I'm curious to know what your feelings are on this. I do respect your opinions tremendously. I actually think the Memphis Grizzlies are a tougher out than the Phoenix Suns for the Golden State Warriors. I also think if the Grizzlies somehow win this series, they're going to beat Phoenix. I really do believe that. I think Phoenix, people are relying so much on the regular season success. And to me, the regular season is something that you can't look that much into. I mean, there's truth to it, but the postseason is just a whole other game. Am I crazy to you? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think you're crazy. I understand it. I would certainly fear the Suns more than the Grizzlies. But from a matchup standpoint, there are some certain things that truly give the Warriors trouble from the Grizzlies standpoint. And keep this in mind here too. The Grizzlies are about to get stronger. From the way I understand it, there's a really good chance here, either games 3 or 4, that we're going to see Steven Adams return to the lineup for Memphis. And that, we go back to 2016 with Draymond kicking Steven Adams. I'm sure there's part of him that wants to get back at Draymond, right? So that's going to add a little more fuel to the fire of this series. And I also think not having Andre Igoudala in this series is massive. And we're going to find out later today, what the latest is on Igoudala. So Golden State needs him back, particularly without Gary Payton, right? Like they need another wing defender. They need another perimeter defender out there. And Igoudala with his neck injury has been a big blow for Golden State, which they've been able to overcome, for the last week so far. But the one thing I would say, here's why you might be crazy about thinking Memphis is more difficult. The only reason why I like your point is kind of what I said earlier, is building this momentum and just getting these games and minutes under their legs, right? Like Golden State hasn't had that because of all the games missed by all these different guys. I think, 32 different starting lineups. That's unheard of for a team that could win a championship. So I say that to say this. Phoenix coming off a loss in the NBA Finals. They've got Chris Paul. They've got Devin Booker, who in my mind was a top 5 MVP finalist. Like, you don't want to mess with that type of stuff. You don't ever want to say, Memphis with all this lack of experience is a tougher battle than these guys with all this experience. So I still would fear Phoenix more, but I understand the point of once this team starts to get rolling, and if they can look like they looked in some of those games, games 1 and 2, and in certain parts of game 5 against Denver, like it's really exciting. I understand why Dub Nation is excited.
Yeah, it's a cautious optimism and a very the excitement has a nervousness to it, just because this Grizzlies team is a formidable opponent. This is, in my opinion, of all the dynasty runs, and they're finally back in the playoffs. This is one of the toughest tests that they've ever faced. I mean, this is a very challenging circumstance. I am curious to know, first of all, your reporting is fantastic. I tweet a lot of your reports because every time they go to you for your courtside reports, you always have new facts. And people forget that's what reporting is supposed to entail. You're supposed to actually inform the audience. You're the one that broke the story about Andre Igoudala and the neck issue. And I'm curious. So great job on that. I'm curious to know, what do you think the Warriors will do in terms of the Gary Payton II absence? Like how are they going to replace him given they were putting him in the starting lineup for very good reason. Like, he was effective at guarding Ja Morant. If you look at the analytics, when he's actually matched up one-on-one, Ja was shooting horribly. I think his shooting percentage was like 18% or somewhere in that range. What are the Warriors going to do? You mentioned Andre Igoudala. I think that's someone they are going to rely on, which is kind of crazy. He's 38 years old. What do you think the Warriors are going to do to make up for this sudden hole, defensively especially?
Yeah, I'm curious about some of the same things. I've been thinking about it as well. And I wonder if they go back to a little bit of the strategy that they had against Denver and particularly in Jokic, where clearly it was, all right, listen, we're going to put Draymond on Jokic, but we're not going to send any help for the simple reason that if Jokic wants to score 50, fine, let him. As long as he doesn't get 10, 12, 15 assists, we can still win. And the thing that has made the Warrior dynasty so great and so unique was not only did the Warriors put together this historic offense, but they were always among the top 2 or 3 or 5 at the very worst defenses in the league. And that's what I think kind of gets lost in the sauce of them.
True.
But I'm very much of the new school mentality. I love defense. I love guys who play hard on defense. I think Gary Payton will be a huge loss. But in 2022, offense wins championships. Like a great defense cannot stop a great offense. A great offense will win out all the time. And we've seen it with the Warriors. So to me, I almost wonder if you're okay with Ja getting 50. As long as Bane, who's clearly got a back issue and was struggling the other night, Bane, Jaren Jackson, like there's a lot of people in Memphis I was talking to and listening to on the radio down there in Memphis. Sorry about that.
What was that? But what is that? Is that your phone?
No, I'm at the Peabody in Memphis, and there's ducks in the hotel.
Are you serious?
Well, I mean, there are ducks in the Peabody, but I'm actually home in Atlanta right now. I'm kidding. It was my phone ringing. It was my ring on my phone.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. It was to honor the ducks in the Peabody. Yeah. Have you ever seen it? At 5 o'clock every day, the ducks walk across the lobby. It's awesome.
I have not seen that. That's fascinating. Go ahead.
You're not missing anything, I promise you. But I think that, many people in Memphis think that Jaren Jackson kind of had his game in game 1 where he scored 30. I think Jared Jackson's capable of doing that again, but I don't know, if the Warriors lock him down, lock Bane down, if Brooks, whenever he plays, and Brandon Clark, you don't let those supporting cast guys get theirs. I think the Warriors could be okay with Ja Morant getting 50. It's not a great way to win a game. It's not a great game plan to go in and have, but it's kind of what they used against Jokic, and more so it was because just the lack of options Jokic has. But if you really can lock in on everyone else and let Morant go one-on-one, whether it's against Jordan Poole or if they feel confident that Klay could get a couple of possessions a game against them. And then, again, whenever Iguodala comes back, that'll be interesting too.
Yeah, and I think the Warriors do need Iguodala, especially with Gary Payton II out. You mentioned Stephen Curry and sorry, were you going to say something? I apologize.
No.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned, Stephen Curry and obviously the offense winning being the primary variable for a team's success in this postseason. I agree with you as well. I think offense will win out, even though I think you do need a solid defense as well. But I think you're correct. What is going on with the Warriors, man? In your opinion, the last game, Klay Thompson went 2 for 12 from 3. Stephen Curry went 3 for 11, I believe. These are not your typical Splash Brother numbers. Even Jordan Poole in game 2 wasn't shooting what he normally does. Is this Memphis's defense causing this? Was it just an off night? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a combination. You got to give Memphis a little bit of credit. I think you have to look at the turnovers that the Warriors have had. I think some of those, issues that have always creeped up for the Warriors, turnovers have always been the one Achilles that they've had going back to, even 2013.
True.
So I think those are things that you've got to look at. But I also think, too, we're watching a team doing in May in the second round of the playoffs what in past years they've done in December and January, right? Like this team just doesn't have that chemistry just yet. And I think, Jordan Poole is trying to be this kind of third Splash Brother, and at times it's forced a little bit. Jordan Poole is at his best, and we saw it in the Denver series, when he's not just shooting or attacking, but when he's getting others involved and when he's playing solid defense. So I would not worry about the Warrior struggles from the field. That is one thing that would not concern me. I think that'll even itself out.
Oh, that is music to the ears of Dub Nation right there. Jared Greenberg joins me. You can follow him on Twitter at Jared S. Greenberg. I only have you for a couple more minutes. Tell us about your background, man. Again, you work, in my opinion, maybe this is a two-part question. One, give the audience your background. How did you get to this position where you're a courtside reporter covering the biggest games on the planet? And two is maybe a philosophical media type question. What does TNT do right time and time and again that ESPN does not? Like, why are you folks like an A-level high quality broadcast? And I don't mean to disparage ESPN, but I am, and you don't have to, but they're not the same. It's like, it's such a minor league production compared to you folks.
Well,
tell us about how you got to where you are. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I appreciate. How did you get to where you are, and what makes TNT so much better than everyone else, in my opinion?
Well, first of all, thank you for all of that. So this is my 11th season at Turner. I've been with TNT and Turner since 2012, and it's been the best decade of my life. It's been unbelievable. Before that, I was up in New York, and I was working a whole bunch of different things, but primarily I was doing a lot of high school sports. I was also doing a lot of college sports. I've covered the NBA prior to the last 10 years, working for NBA TV before it got, so NBA TV now is owned and operated by Turner Sports. So you see me on NBA TV, you see me on Turner, on TNT. We have the same basically studios. We're on the same campus in Atlanta. And I used to work for NBA TV when the league itself operated it, when it was in Secaucus, right near where the replay center is now that everybody hears so much about. And I've done a lot of play-by-play for college sports. I've done a lot of sideline reporting. I've done a lot of local news in the New York tri-state area. Like I said, I covered a lot of high school sports, but it's been a very long journey. I started in this business when I was about 14 years old, and the coolest part, particularly about this series that I'm working now, is that when I was 14 years old, I was going to New Jersey Net games in the Meadowlands in the Swamp. And their broadcaster then and still now, the voice of the Nets, is Ian Eagle.
Yes.
And I used to tap him on the shoulders. I'd go to games. I'd tap him on the shoulder and say, I'm going to be doing what you're doing one day. And now this series, 25 years later, this series, Ian's working, doing play-by-play with Jim Jackson, who's phenomenal as well. And the three of us are working together. So it's really a pinch myself moment every time Ian welcomes us to the broadcast and he says, on the sidelines today is Jared Greenberg. That to me is like, it's just such a cool moment. It sees my career come full circle. But as far as the TNT stuff goes, listen, I think ESPN does a great job, and especially the game crew like Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson. Love listening.
Let's make that an exception. Make that an exception. Those three are and the in game is fantastic. I guess maybe I'm referring more to like the pre-post, all that stuff.
Sorry, I would say the biggest strength for TNT, the philosophy, and I think his title is executive producer, but Tim Kiley, the guy who's been the brains of the operations for Inside the NBA for years. There's a couple of things. Number one, nothing's scripted. Like nothing that you ever see. The funniest stuff, the lamest stuff, the dumbest stuff, the craziest stuff. None of it is ever scripted, including my dog going crazy right now. That is not scripted. We have not planned that out.
I'm a dog person too, man. Love it.
Yeah. After this month, I may not be a dog person anymore. I'm not sure. But I think, we do our job. We take our job seriously. We don't take ourselves seriously. And I think that's kind of the mantra. And the leader of the pack is Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley. And they set the tone for everyone that works there. Nobody has a big ego. You can't have thick skin. You've got to be prepared to be made fun of, and you've got to roll with the punches. You've got to do your homework, be prepared, make sure you're informing the audience and the viewers, but you've also got to be entertaining them, because we recognize we're not talking about politics, religion, war, the stock market. We're talking about basketball. And oftentimes we go other places than basketball, and you have to be ready to go there, and it's just fun, right? Like we make it fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and we just kind of, we roll with it. And I think it's not overthinking, right? It sounds really simple. And listen, you have to have the right personalities to do it. You can't just throw anybody on the set and replace Charles Barkley and say, be like Charles. And Ernie needs to get more credit too, because he is literally the greatest host in the history of sports on television. And the way he navigates that situation and keeps those guys in check, or lets them go, or sets them up for more, or joins the joke, it's awesome. So I appreciate all the compliments. I mean, this is there's no question for me. Like, as much fun as people have watching it, I hope they understand we have working on the shows and on the games and part of this crew. And I'll never forget it. The first day I was ever there, Charles Barkley pulled me aside and said, "Welcome to the family, Jared." And I thought it was just like a cliche thing. I thought he was just like kind of saying that, but it's true. And I've seen it now for 10 years that, we go on the road. If Charles happens to be there, he's going to buy me and everybody else drinks. He's taking care of us. And it's just like, it's a good time. We have as much fun putting on these games and broadcasts as we hope you have watching them.
Oh my God. I just imagine drinks with Charles Barkley being one of the funnest experiences ever. And you mentioned my old boss, Bob Agnew, always said the recipe for success with any media production is being informative and being entertaining. And I feel like you folks balance that perfectly. Everything you said is true. It's congratulations. Just keep doing what you're doing. I hope Charles Barkley re-ups. I don't want him to leave ever. And you just keep doing what you're doing, man, because I really love what you're producing. It translates, man. The fun translates through the camera to the audience. It's your attitudes are contagious, and your attitudes are just really lighthearted and fun. And I'll stop blowing you now. So you do your thing, man. Jared Greenberg, he's covering the Warriors and Grizzlies this series for TNT. I know you got to run, man. You got a hectic travel schedule. Hug your dog for me. I lost mine recently, so I always say cherish every moment you have with them. And you're welcome on this program anytime, brother. Thank you so much,
Cyrus. Dude. Thank you for having me. I love talking to passionate people, and you're certainly one of them. This has been awesome, and I thank Dub Nation for welcoming me in these last few weeks, and I can't wait to get back out to San Francisco tonight.
Love it, man. Have fun. And that's Jared Greenberg. You follow him on Twitter at Jared S. Greenberg. What a pleasure that was. That's just a great dude right there. And I think Kristen Ledlow, his partner at NBA TV, is going to join us next week. That's just, I cannot emphasize enough what high quality programming is on television and for video. And that's what TNT is doing with these broadcasts. And I just say kudos. I wish other organizations kind of followed their model. It's incredible content, and I'm always recording their shows and watching it all the time. Want to give some love to our sponsor, Rock Auto. If you want to save money in this day and age, everyone's driving. Prices are high, especially gas prices. They're utterly insane. So why not download the app or go to the website for Rock Auto? With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain parts auto store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like is your Odyssey an LX or an EX, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? An example being in Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store, just $216 from Rock Auto. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board. Hosts Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and the author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Doolin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, the big boards. Is free and available wherever you get podcasts. One final segment, wrapping things up here. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRocho, where I routinely post what I hope is great Warriors content and beyond. You can follow this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. I really loved what Jared Greenberg was saying there. Tomorrow, Kylan Mills of Cron 4 is going to join me for the final Warriors preview. And we're going to go more into details and numbers. We should have a lot more information by tomorrow, including whether or not Dillon Brooks is going to play. And look, I mean, Jared Greenberg had to toe, a delicate line there in terms of what he says. He has to maintain objectivity. But if Dillon Brooks gets anything less than 2 games, I'm going to consider that just atrocious, pure blasphemy, simply because, again, Gary Payton II's Gary Payton II's season is over. And that was, I guess, here's the argument I routinely will ask anyone who doesn't think that was a truly dirty play, is if that was not a dirty play, what Dillon Brooks did to Gary Payton II, the full windup, just smacking him right in the head, what is? I thought Rick Barry articulated it beautifully yesterday when he joined me along with Brian Witt in terms of describing, what the proper punishment is, in terms of describing what is a dirty and what is not a dirty foul. And it was atrocious. It was just a very poorly conducted act. And I really think if it's anything less than 2 games, you're committing a pure fallacy there. But I think Jared's right. I think the most we're going to see is 1 game. I'm very curious to see how Chase Center reacts to him. I don't know how easily I'd be able to control my emotions if I was at Chase Center as a fan with Dillon Brooks there, but that's the reality of the situation. And I really do believe wholeheartedly as I wrap things up here that the Grizzlies are the toughest out. What I didn't get a chance to bring up with Jared is when you look at the regular season, those games between the Suns and the Warriors, both those teams were trying. Okay, both those teams were not taking those games lightly. And I know Christmas Day was a long time ago now. It was over 4 months, but the Warriors on Christmas resemble the Warriors now much more so than the Warriors, say, in February or March. And the Warriors cleaned shop in that game in Phoenix. And then when the teams did meet again late in the regular season at Chase, the Warriors didn't have Steph and Curry and only lost that game by 4. Draymond Green was in Jay Crowder's head. I really firmly believe that the Grizzlies are going to be the toughest out. They're just a nasty team. They are, but they got an incredible amount of arrogance, which translates to a lot of mental confidence, which I think is a vitally huge variable. And they're just a tough matchup for this Warriors team. But I really do hope the Warriors pull this off. If there's a sense I got from Jared is that he really feels comfortable with the Warriors moving on from this series. I do not share that comfort. Again, I hope the Warriors win, and I think they will pull this off. But without Gary Payton II, I think national media is really undervaluing him in terms of his role in this Warriors team. He was an insanely important cog in this machine. I mean, his defense on Ja Morant. Again, just the stats speak for themselves, and I'll get those full measurables, those full numbers tomorrow when I'm with Kylan. And he would have been the primary defender on Chris Paul. Chris Paul hated being guarded by Gary Payton II, and this is just adds to the importance of Andre Igoudala, a player that I don't think the Warriors wanted to count on, but now to a large extent will have to count on. Anyways. Kylan Mills joins me tomorrow. I cannot thank Jared Greenberg enough. You could follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow, this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. From the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals, Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Thank you, Dub Nation. And for everyone else listening, I'll be back tomorrow again with Kylan Mills. Until then, take care. Later.